Hello, everybody. Welcome to Kevin Plays Disc Golf. Today we have a playthrough and course review from Wilton Lyndeborough Cooperative Middle School and Senior High School Disc Golf Course, also known as WLC DGC, in Wilton, New Hampshire. My name is Kevin, and I play disc golf. Filming on course for this video was done on September 14th and 21st, 2024. The course originally opened in 2012. There are a few different options for how to get to the course, but my suggestion is to enter WLC School into the GPS of your choice, and it should be accurate. It is accurate on Google Maps and UDisc. Just be careful when turning onto School Road, which is the main entrance to the school, as there are two large speed bumps. The UDisc GPS location is the starting kiosk, and the Google Maps pin is the school itself. Either way, on the left of the road across from the second speed bump is the starting kiosk for the course. The parking lot was in the process of being repaved at the time of filming, so the exact best place to park may have changed, but I prefer to park near the baseball field if it is not being used. There is a path next to the third base side dugout of the baseball field to get to the practice basket near the first tee. This course is on school property and is not open during school hours. Holes 7 and 8 on the disc golf course cross the track, soccer field, and softball field, so if those are in use, those holes will not be playable. There are also occasionally tournaments at this course on weekends, so it's worth checking the schedule before making a long trip to play this course. I have played this course a few times, and though it was dry at the time I played, the property is on a hill and is likely to drain well. I don't expect anything beyond some of the trails and hills being slippery from mud, even if it has been particularly wet in the spring. There is only one set of baskets and tee pads at this course, so there is only one course configuration, though the layout of several of the holes does not match what is on UDisc. Alcohol and tobacco are not allowed on this course. There were no public trash cans that I saw, so trash should be treated as carry in, carry out. Though there are no permanent public restrooms, at the time I played, as with many of the courses that I've played that are on school property, there were a couple of porta potties near the athletic fields that were being used in the fall. There is no drinking water available. Dogs are allowed as long as they are cleaned up after. On the days that I have played, there were people walking in the park and using the trails. Most common was people jogging on the track, however I did encounter a couple of people mountain biking on the trails as well. I believe all of the walking and biking trails are visible from the tee, so just make sure that no one is in range before you throw. That said, most of the people that I saw on the disc golf course were there playing disc golf. I'll have my overall review of the course at the end of the video. Be sure to post your comments as to your thoughts of what looks fun and where you think the problem areas are. Now let's go to the property. The course playthrough starts at the second speed bump on School Street, across from the starting kiosk that you pass on the way in.
It is on the grounds of the middle school and high school. So as you are pulling up, you'll see the second speed bump ahead sign, caution speed bump. And then to the left of the road, you will see the board. I assume that they would have announcements if there are tournaments or things going on. If you continue on, you can see there's some construction here, but being a school, there is lots of parking options. This is where the course starts. From the sign to get to the first hole, just to the left of it, there's a downed tree here, but there is a path just beyond this. Walk up this short little hill, and here we are at the tee pad for hole 1. If you'd like a little putting practice before your round, just to the right, so if you were to throw backwards off the tee, and see there is a practice basket right up here, top of the hill. So there's a little practice area. This is not one of the actual holes for the course, so you can practice to your heart's content before actually going out on the course. Hole 1 is a 260-foot par 3, dogleg right. You cannot see the basket from the tee. However, there's a birch tree straight ahead, and there is a small orange sign on the tree The hole is just beyond and to the right of that, probably about 30 feet back and to the right of that tree. If you can get it past that tree to the right side of it, you're gonna have a putt for birdie. Here we are at the birch tree with the orange sign on it, and you can see the basket is not too far back behind it. Although you do have to go over the hill, the elevation of the tee is very close to the elevation of the basket itself. These baskets appear to all be single chain baskets, so they're a little bit less forgiving than most, but they do appear to have the orange stripe on them to make them easier to see from farther away. From the basket of one, just past the basket, there's another path, and it's pretty easy to see, and right up there you can see the tee pad for hole 2. Hole 2 is a 307-foot par 3 dogleg left. You do need to go straight down this fairway. The big pine tree straight ahead does have an orange marker on it, but basically if you are past the last birch tree that you can see on the left and that pine tree, that's kind of the gap you want to shoot for. The further you can go in, the better off you are. There is a little bit of a crest, and then it's downhill to the basket from there. But I'll give you a shot in the landing zone from up by where that big pine tree is with the marker on it. But basically, if you might get past the birch tree, you're at least going to have a look at the basket and have a good shot at a 3 from there. Here we are looking at the pine tree and next to the birch tree that I mentioned that we need to get past. So you can see there's a little hump here, but just past the hump down that gap is the basket. If you end up further up that way, you're still going to have a shot, maybe even a shot at a 2 from there. I'm on the opposite side of the fairway from the birch tree, but a little bit past it out there, so I'm going to at least have a shot at getting down close to the basket and have a realistic shot at a 3 from there. A terrible second shot left me with a 4, but it did end up there. One other thing to note is there are a couple downed birch trees here that make nice backstops if you go too far. And if we can grab our disc out of the basket. So from the second basket to get to the third tee, it's not exactly obvious where to go here, but if you go over the birch tree and just take a step up, there are these small black and white signs, arrows. They are kind of hard to see. They do blend in and are easy to miss if you don't know they're there. But there are a couple of them on the way up this path to get to the third tee. We can continue on walking up the hill. There is a second of the small black arrows. And when we get to the crest of this hill, there's a third small black arrow over here. And right in front of us on the other side of the crest of this hill is the tee for hole 3. Hole 3 is a 180-foot par 3. It is slightly uphill. It is a slight dogleg to the left. If you're standing on the tee pad, you cannot see the basket. However, if you stand just to the right of the tee pad, you can see there is a large tree with a black arrow on it pointing up and to the left. Then there's a tree with the orange marker on it, which is pointing down to the left. And then just in front of that tree with the orange marker on it, to the left is the basket itself. So from here you can see all 3 of those. You can only see the 2 arrows from the tee itself. So at the basket you can get an idea of how close that tree with the orange marker on it is to the basket. It's maybe 6 feet from the tree to the center of the basket. I hit every tree on this hole, so I ended up with a 4. To get to the next hole, we can grab our disc out of the basket and follow the path to the left of the basket and continue on. And there is the tee for hole 4 right up there. Hole 4 is a 250-foot par 3, dead straight away. You can actually see the basket from the tee, but it may not show up on the video just because of the way the lighting is hitting it. However, you can see the orange marker, and the basket is just to the left of that. And I'll point out on the video in editing exactly where the basket is to make it easier to see. All right, we're in the landing zone for hole 4, looking back at the tee. So if we spin around here You can see the basket and note the orange arrow. You can't see the basket, but you can see the orange arrow from the tee. Where my disc is, I'm there in 2 after having bounced off a couple of trees. We can walk up here. We got a 3 on this after having bounced off a couple trees and making a 10-foot putt. Grab our disc out of the basket, then take a left turn and back a little bit further. There are a few different paths, but this one is the one that basically looks like you're going backwards along the course. And we come through this little gap here, and there's the old wire spool. And here we have the tee for hole 5. Hole 5 is a 270-foot par 3, dogleg right, significantly uphill. There is out of bounds to the right, but it's a few feet after it starts going steeply downhill, the sort of where the hill rolls off. It is marked by rope, but it shouldn't really come into play. The only way it will come into play is if you bounce off a tree and end up over in that direction, which, as you can see, is quite possible. There are no special rules or drop zones listed, so I would just play this as standard out of bounds, come back to where it went out, and go from there. You cannot see the basket from here. You have to go a solid 70 or 80 feet up the fairway to sort of where the bottom of that valley is before you can see the basket going up to the right. I'll give you a better view from up there to see exactly where you're going. Here we are about 100 feet off the tee, looking back at the tee, and we're kind of the bottom of the valley. And if we swing around, you can see that between those 2 trees, dead ahead, the basket is uphill. Again, you have a few different options as to exactly how to get here. My tee shot ended up ahead and to the right up there, but I'm gonna have a pretty clear shot, at least to get close to the basket to make an easy 3. A couple other things to note here is that there are some guardian trees right near the basket, so those definitely do come into play. They are within 10 feet of the basket, 3 of them, 2 that you can see from here, 1 that's hidden behind that larger tree. So just something to be aware of for what in my case would be my second shot, or if you're looking to make a run at the basket, that you can end up bouncing off those and have a roll away back down the hill if you get too hard into those trees. I ended up laying it up and playing just short of these 2 guardian trees. So we have our drop in for 3 here. And then from there, to get from here to hole 6, we can grab our disc out of the basket and turn to the left, and we can see hole 6 right there in front of us. Hole 6 is a 225-foot par 3, dogleg right. It does go sort of over a crest, down through a valley, and then goes uphill again at the basket. This is another one where you can't see the basket off the tee. However, if we go to the crest of the hill, about 40 feet straight in front of us, we can see it off to the right. There is a clear shot from the basket, but it's a narrow path through trees to get there. The large pine tree on the right is kind of the big one you need to go around that way. And then there's sort of a small birch tree behind that, which I'll point out in editing, that if you go to the right of that, that's going to send you out in the general direction of where the basket is. At the crest of the little hill, there's the tee, and if we swing around, there we can see the basket straight ahead. I'll point it out a little bit better in editing, because again, the lighting is a little bit weird here. I ended up somewhere down to the right, but I should be in reasonable shot to at least have a good shot at a 3 from where I am. My shot ended up going quite a bit farther than I thought it did, ended up the hill, so I have sort of a middle of circle 2 putt for birdie from here. I do have a clean gap, so let's see what I can do with it. Nope, tree. All right, it's a bit of a walk from the basket of hole 6 to the tee of hole 7. So if you look at the basket, there's a little sign above it, that arrow pointing back the way you came. And if we go back pretty much right back where I took my putt from, and there's a path going up this hill where today it looks like you are going out of the dark and into the bright sunshine. And this little path, once we get to the top of it, leads out to the soccer field and the track. And if we take a right and follow the track, we can see the tee for hole 7. The sign is to the back of us, but that is right where the tee is. Hole 7 is a 390-foot par 3. This is definitely on the long side for a par 3, but it is pretty open and flat to slightly downhill. The basket is about 40 feet to the left and back of the third light pole for the field. And once we get up a little closer, I'll show you where it is, but it's definitely a long way to get there. So this is a good bomber hole to see how far you can actually throw your disc and let one rip. So it's more like 20 feet from the light pole to the basket. As you can see, I'm actually here in 3. I did confirm on this hole that going through the trees on the left side rather than out into the field is not the way to go. So I'm here in 3, not in 1 or 2 where I should be. But you can see its basket is not too far behind that pole, and it is open. It does drop off pretty significantly to the left and behind the hole, so this is kind of a death putt. After my drop in for 5 on hole 7, to get to the hole 8 tee, we can walk up back to the track. Something to note here is as you're walking up to the track, if you look up on the upper field, you can see the hole 8 basket. It's easier to see from here than from the tee, but I'll point out from the tee exactly where to look, but you kind of have to look through that big tree on the left that's above the soccer basket to get there. So as we get to the track, we can keep walking over here, and here's the hole 8 tee. It is basically at the other end of the straightaway from where the hole 7 tee was. Hole 8 is a 291-foot par 3, uphill and to the upper field. So the tree that is sticking out to the right of the main tree line, that is definitely in play here. You can sort of see the basket through the trees. Again, depending on how the leaves are going, you may or may not be able to see it from where you are, but it does go significantly uphill, and it looks like those weeds are definitely in play. That's probably where I'm going to end up driving. Not that I want to end up there, but that's probably just where it's going to end up. We are at the intersection of the edge of the track and the start of the coarse gravel path. You can see how dense the brush is over on this right side, and you can see how much uphill it is to the basket. It's about 20 vertical feet from here up to the basket, and then the basket is probably about 40 feet past the top of the crest at the top of the hill. At the start of the top of the hill, looking back at the tee, you can see where we came from, and if we swing around, we can see where we're going to. The basket's raised a little bit, not too high, but we're about 30 feet from the basket itself. As long as you make it up here, it's not too bad. It opens up quite a bit up here, so you have a clear shot from wherever you end up being from up top here. There is no signage here to show you where to go from hole 8 to hole 9. However, if you stand with your back to the scoreboard on this upper field, basically in the same spot that I am here, we can come up, grab our disc, and keep going straight this way. And there is a small path here. And if we take this small path, go down the hill, and here we have the tee pad for hole 9. Hole 9 is a 150-foot par 3 straight uphill. Here again, the video does not do justice to how far uphill this really is. You can't see the basket from here, However, if you look at the tree that has the orange ribbon around it, and sort of just to the right of that, between that and the next tree over, you'll see a very large rock at the end of the rock wall up top, and just above that you can see a flag that they have up there. Again, I'll point that out to show better where it is, but that is on top of the basket. Here we are at the top of the hill, so you can see on the left side where that rock is. I ended up going way right and releasing the disc early. However, it bounced off the rocks and ended up just to the left of where we're standing here. So even though I had kind of a bad first shot, I still have a circle 2 putt here for birdie. So let's see what we can do from here. Not great, but we can make a 3 from there pretty easily. At the basket of 10, looking back in the direction of the tee, one thing to note is that you may see this on some other courses as well. It's a little faded, but if you see there's a painted spoke there, that painted spoke leads you in the direction of the next hole. I didn't see it on hole 8 going to hole 9, but I did notice it here after I took a quick look to the left, went over there, saw the sign and tee pad. That's the tee pad for 13, not for 10. So if we follow the direction of this painted spoke here, that leads us over here and takes us up this path. And again, this is a fairly wide path, and right at the end of this we have the tee pad for hole 10. Hole 10 is a 225-foot par 3. The main path here goes from right to left. There's a more direct path that you can see the basket straight through to the left with that is quite a bit narrower. One thing I will point out that you can't tell from here is that the basket is mounted on top of that large rock that it sits on. So if you can hit that rock, you're going to have a drop in from wherever you end up. Looking back at the tee from about 150 feet out, we can spin around, and this gives you a better idea of exactly what the trees look like near the rocks. And there's a lot of guardian trees, so sort of the safe play from the tee is to go through this gap to the right, and if you can hit that gap all the way to the end, you're going to end up with a circle 1 putt for 2. There are logs behind and trees behind, so there's a lot of things to catch the disc from going too far here. From your tee shot, if you bounce it off this rock, you're going to end up with a pretty good in a pretty good spot and have basically a drop in for 2 here. So I went through the woods and ended up here for 3. So let's see, have our short little putt for 3. There we go. All right. And to get to hole 11, if we go directly past this and just look back to the left as your back is to the tee and facing the basket, it'll walk through here, and we are at hole 11. Hole 11 is a 175-foot par 3, dogleg right to left. You can see the basket through a narrow gap in the trees, which again I'll point out in editing. Maybe a little bit hard to see here again with the way the lighting is here in the woods. But the main path goes from right to left. A couple things to note is that the rock wall to the left and the rock wall behind the basket are out of bounds. So with this being short, it is very easy to throw a disc that ends up too long out of bounds, or with all the trees that ends up too far left out of bounds. So this is a nice short challenging hole. So even though it's short, it is definitely one that's still a challenge. Well, the good news is that I ended up close to the basket. The bad news is that I ended up OB long. So there is a rope going along some of the left side and behind on top of the rock wall. So we can take our penalty stroke and relief. Thankfully, it went in pretty much right here. So even though I'm out of bounds, it's basically a drop in for 3, even with the out of bounds. So there we go. And then to get to hole 12, we can take a slight veer to the left And the hole 12 tee pad is right in front of us here. Hole 12 is a 242-foot par 3 with out of bounds on the left. The out of bounds on the left is a rock wall, and it is way left. So it is difficult enough to get there that it's really not in play. Even if you hit a tree and kick left, it's still far enough away that it's going to be tough to get out there. The hole itself goes straight ahead over this first wood pile. There's a second wood pile beyond. These are intentionally put there to make the shot a little bit more interesting. The basket is about 45 feet past the second log wall. The second log wall is a little bit shorter than this one, straight ahead. It's a little bit higher on the right. It'll give you a little bit better shot once we're closer up there to see what it looks like if you hit that first rock wall and end up in the landing zone there. Here I am just to the left of this first log wall. And if we lean over here a little bit, we can see the basket over the top of the right side of the shorter part of the second log wall there. I ended up here in two. I ended up bouncing off some trees because that's something that's fun to do here. So we'll see how I end up here, but I at least have a shot at the basket and should be able to get it in for 4 from here. We had our drop in for 5. Again, my third shot was not very good, so I ended up with a 5 on that one. But sometimes that happens here in woods courses. So from here, you'll notice the log configuration. So with the empty log at the back is facing opposite the tee. From here, we can take a left. And we can take a little look down here. So for the out of bounds on 12, there is a rock wall here. So I guess that rock wall is what they're calling out of bounds. This is way far out there, so this didn't come into play. Like when I went looking for where the out of bounds was, I never made it over that far to that rock wall. So it doesn't really come into play, but we can continue along the trail here. We do want to be a little bit careful, see if there's anybody throwing off the tee, because right up here, we have our tee box for 13. And again, we're throwing in the direction opposite of where we're walking right now. Hole 13 is a 240-foot par 3, slightly downhill. There are some narrow trees to get through. You can see the basket from the tee as long as you are standing with your right foot on the wooden plank. There's a narrow gap on the right side, which I will point out in editing, but you can see the tee from the basket, though maybe not where you would originally throw it from. There is out of bounds on the left side, which is that same rock wall that was out of bounds left for 12, is also out of bounds left for 13. Here we are about 50 feet away from the basket on 13. I ended up in the woods on the right, but didn't hit anything to get there, so I actually have a clear shot for a 2 from there. One thing that I just wanted to note is that on this fairway, there are several of these holes along the way that looks like where tree stumps have been removed. So just be a little bit careful of them if you're in the middle of the fairway. After making our 3 with the tee for hole 13 behind us, looking at the basket, we can grab our disc out of the basket. And then we want to turn slightly to the left and walk up this path here. Now, the path sort of divides here. You're actually going to want to go left over the rock wall or through the break in the rock wall. And got a couple paths to get there. There's one going straight and around to the back of the tee pad, or if there's nobody playing, you can take this little shortcut to the front of the tee pad. And here we are for the hole 13 tee. Hole 14 is a 372-foot par 3, downhill, blind through the woods. So I don't think you can see it from here, but if you're standing up on the tee pad, you can see a tree with an orange marker on it. It's that first large tree sticking up. And then on the right side, there are sort of a line of trees on the right side of that gap, and the basket is at the end of that line of trees on the right side. This is one that I think you take your 4 and be happy with it here. From the top of the rock wall in front of the tee, you can better see the orange marker on the tree and that line of trees to the right side. I'm actually in the brush on the right. Somehow I got something down there and missed everything until I got down, but I'll give you a look at the hole once we get closer there. We'll give you a look at the hole from next to that tree with the orange marker on it. From next to the tree with the orange marker on it, we can see the basket from here. It is over that rock wall to the right. There is no out of bounds on this hole, so the rock wall is just kind of, there's a little obstacle. Well, I made a 25-foot putt for 3 on this hole, so I guess par 3 is going to be fine here. From the basket with my back to the tee, if we go up to this path to the right, just a couple things to note. We do need to go up this smaller path to the right. We take a look down that path to the left. That takes us to hole 17 down there. But to get to 15, we can take this path up to the right. And the tee pad is right here in front of us. Hole 15 is a 370-foot par 3, severe dogleg right, significantly uphill. There is the little gap to the right, which is the most direct path to get there. Following the road on the left is a little bit more open and safer, but it is a long way and is going to require a big second shot to get there. The basket is along that road, but again, it is quite far up. It is a long way to get there. Here we are at the crest of the hill looking back at the tee. And if we turn around, we still cannot see the basket from here, but it is off in that direction. If we go a little bit further up the road here to the corner of the road, and from here, we can see the basket down at the end of the road there, just in front of that last large tree. I ended up with a 5 here after coming out of the woods and missing about a 25-foot putt for bogey. With our back facing down the road, to get from 15 to 16, you have a couple options. What is probably the more correct way is to take this little trail back to the road and take a left down the road and continue down this little gravel path here. And here we are at the tee pad. There is a little bit of a shortcut there, going sort of directly through this trail here, back up to the basket. I'm not sure you can see the basket get through the trees. All right, there's part of the basket shining on the bottom. So you can come down this little path as well. Either way works. Hole 16 is a 255-foot par 3. Dead straight downhill. One thing to note here is that on the right side, though there is no out of bounds, it does drop off very steeply, and pretty much no matter where you're going to be on the right side, it's going to be a death putt if you're either right or long of the basket. All right, here I am for my second shot, and this gives at least a little bit better idea of how steeply it drops off to the right on the right side of the basket. So even from here, where I've got maybe 60, 70 feet, this is probably going to be a layup just so I don't roll down the hill. I had about a 12-foot putt for my 3 from over there, which even that is scary once you see that what's past the basket. If you get something that goes down there, it can just go on forever. But we took our 3 and we will move on. So if you continue down this path, you want the one that stays level, not the one that goes down to the right. So just continuing on the road from basically the road that followed the hole. Go down this little hill. There are a couple places where there are these white arrows on the trees. That is not where we want to go. But just so we see there is a basket there. That is the basket for 18 when we come back up here. For hole 18, that rock wall is OB, so anything past the rock wall is OB long. It is tough to get there because it is so far uphill, which we'll see when we get there. But to get to 17, we can continue up this path here and continue on uphill. Now, it does look like there is still some construction in process on some of the tee pads. So 14 looks like it may be a full tee pad shortly. 17 here, because this path I believe is a bike path, there's probably not going to be a tee pad here. But here we are at hole 17. Hole 17 is a 201-foot par 3, pretty much straight downhill, and the hill continues downhill past the hole. Where the main gap is to the right, so if you have a right to left shot, that's ideal. You can see the basket from the left side of the tee, but this is a tough short hole to make sure you don't go too long. And again, the video does not justify how steeply downhill this hole is. We're probably a solid 40 vertical feet above the hole. So even though I pretty much exclusively throw right hand forehand off the tee, this is one where I throw backhand just because I need the shot shape and I don't need it to be long where the short arm for going right to left matters. All right, so here's where my drive ended up. As you can see, this gives a good idea of how steeply downhill it is past the basket. I am to the right and a little bit short of the basket. Hit a tree and had my disc roll to here, but I'm gonna play basically a layup disc that I have here that I can sort of throw a flop shot where it won't roll away, hopefully. So yeah, I'm happy with that, even though it didn't go in. It did not roll down the hill, which is the big concern here. So with our back to the tee, we took our drop in for 3, and if we turn to the right, you see this path sort of between these two downed logs. And if we follow this, you still keep going down, down, down. And right here, we end up at the tee pad for hole 18. This tee pad is also not finished. This one they may finish at some point. There aren't any trails or anything to worry about here. And my guess is that with having the wood planks here, it will happen in the not too distant future. Hole 18 is a 198-foot par 3, straight uphill, OB long, which is marked by a rock wall, which I mentioned earlier. Because again, it is so steeply uphill, we're basically going back up the hill we just came down for 17. Even though it's under 200 feet, getting long here is going to be very difficult. Also, from this side, the rock wall is probably 3 to 4 feet high, so you have to go really long to be long on this hole, at least from the tee. The out of bounds comes much more into play on the second shot than the first. Here we are looking back at the tee, again trying to give you an idea of how far uphill hole 18 is. Again, the video doesn't really do it justice. It's probably 40 plus vertical feet to go up. So I ended up next to the basket with about a 20-foot putt for 3, which I made. So it's a good way to end the round here. So now to get out of here, it's a little bit tricky, but if we go past the basket, up this little path, past the rock wall, and take a left, follow this path, this is one thing I've noticed about a lot of the school courses, is that where hole 1 starts and hole 18 ends are not particularly close to each other. In this case, they're probably about a quarter mile apart. So from here, this spits us out to the back side of the school. Now, if you parked in that front parking lot, you can take a left and follow the road around the building that way. The parking lot is basically the opposite corner of this building. And if you're going to the right, where I'm parked over by the baseball field, you can follow that path that way and end up back at your car.
How to get back to where you parked is going to depend on exactly where you parked to begin with. This is another reason that I like to park in the small parking lot for the baseball field, as it does make for a slightly shorter walk back at the end of the round. Though there were no active upgrades that I saw at the time of filming, it appears that there has been regular maintenance and significant tweaking of some of the individual holes throughout the life of the course. It appears that T-pads had just gone in on holes 14 and 18 within the last year. Though the signage was temporary in nature with handwritten hole lengths on the holes, they were of better quality and more informational than some of the permanent signage that I have seen on other courses. It would not surprise me if these trends continued and further tweaks to a few of the holes and minor changes are implemented. The thumbnail picture is from the fairway of hole 12 next to the first log wall looking towards the basket. The two walls on this hole add some character that make this particular hole unique, providing a little bit of an extra punishment to bad shots, stopping them short, but won't cost multiple strokes as a result. I think it's a good and effective way to make this particular hole stand out among the other holes through the woods. My favorite hole is hole 2. It provides an open fairway that goes back into the woods, requiring distance for your first shot and then determining what gap is the best to hit and with what disc on your second shot to get close to the basket. A 3 is a good score here, but a drop-in 3 feels really good. Honorable mention goes to hole 6, though admittedly that may be because a right-hand forehand throw through a tight gap is ideal here, which plays directly into my game. My least favorite hole is hole 15. Though I appreciate the risk-reward nature of the hole as it is, the risk to take the straight path to the basket is too high in the form of a lost disc, and at 370 feet, the reward is that for my noodle arm, I have a 150-foot second shot to the basket instead of a 200-foot shot. If you can throw a 350-plus foot uphill forehand with accuracy, you may love this hole, but unfortunately most of us just can't do that. My solution here would be to push the tee-pad back, put a mando to go left of the trees so that you would be required to follow the road, and make it a 400-ish foot par 4. Dishonorable mentions go to hole 14 for not providing any reliable path through the trees to circle 2 on a par 3, and hole 16 where a bad tree kick right could result in a 150-foot roll down a hill or a lost disc. The first and last holes are critical for introducing the course and leaving the last impression at the end of the round. Hole 1 is an excellent introduction to what to expect from this course. It's a throw through a tight window over a crest to a blind green. Though there are several holes that have these characteristics, they all put them together in ways that are just different enough to feel like you're never playing the same hole that you played earlier in the round. Hole 18, on the other hand, makes me feel like once the round is over, it's time to go home. Hole 18 is so steeply uphill that it makes you feel that no matter how good your throw was, it didn't go very far and that having little to no chance for a birdie on a sub-200-foot hole never feels good. I'd say that playing hole order 17, 18, 15, 16 and having hole 16 be the finishing hole would be an option, but I'm not sure 16 is any better of a finishing hole. I'm not familiar enough with the property to know what a better solution might be, but maybe do something over the top like make a new 14 that goes from the 14 tee to the basket of 15 as a par 5 with a couple of mandos to keep left of, make 16, 17, and 18 the new 15, 16, and 17, and add a hole that goes around the back of the school parking lot to the front of the school for hole 18. I don't know if this is viable with the topography of the property or the tree density, but every time I have played this course, the last 5 holes have given me the feeling of, I'm glad this is over with, rather than, I want to play those again. While on the topic of recommended course changes, another obvious one to me that could be done at zero cost would be to push the basket of 8 back across the upper field and make it a 450-ish foot par 4. This would reward tee shots that can get to the upper field while still offering the opportunity for par for those with less distance but still having precise throws. The only downside that I can see here is a longer walk from the basket of 8 to the tee of 9. This course was not easy to navigate. Though there are several holes that the tee pads can be seen from the basket of the prior hole, there are many that are not, and this can often cause confusion. My first attempt going from 9 to 10 resulted in this.
We made our putt in for 3, and here we are looking back at the tee for hole 9, or at least in the general direction of it. From here, if we take a look to our left, you can see a little ribbon, and if we take a quick walk over here, here's another little break in the wall, and there we have our tee pad for hole 10.
My first time playing this course, going from holes 2 to 3, 6 to 7, and 13 to 14, were mostly the thought of, I hope I'm going the right way, but I'm not sure. Going from 8 to 9, I wandered around the field for about 10 minutes trying to figure out where to go until the person behind me played through and showed me where to go. Going from 14 to 15 resulted in me finding the tee of 17 and the basket for 18, the benefit of which, when I had no idea where I was going after the tee of 16, I knew where I was when I saw the basket of 18. One thing that would be of great benefit would be to put directional markers of some sort on the spokes of all of the baskets, such as repainting one spoke of the basket as was once done on the basket of hole 9, or put the directional arrows that are on many other courses. A couple of other things that would help would be to put a direction to the next tee on the tee signs of the prior tee, as is done at some places, such as Memorial Park, and more signage between holes, as is done very well at the Hollows, would be a big help. On course, there are many blind tee shots where you can't see the basket, though in most cases it is obvious at least the direction that you want to go. The issue is that all of the holes are par 3s, so for the first playthrough you can end up in a less than ideal position because the course doesn't always quite go where you think it should. Holes 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 12, 14, and 15 all have blind tee shots. With UDisc being so inaccurate due to the course changes, what this course really needs is a good video navigation guide that's designed to be useful on a phone screen that you can use when you're on the course to make sure you know that you're going in the right direction, that allows you to jump to the exact place on the course where you happen to be at the time. Navigating this course is like calculating the definite integral between two values of your favorite cubic polynomial function. Once you know what you're doing, it's actually pretty easy to figure out, but if you look at it for the first time, having never seen it before, you might get lost, scared, or lie on the ground in the fetal position and start crying. If you're able to figure out my favorite definite integral in your head, post your favorite cubic polynomial function in the comments. Captain Obvious says that the likelihood of losing discs on this course is pretty low, except for where it's not. The places where it may be difficult to find a disc are the woods left on hole 7, in the long grass going between the fields on hole 8, if you take the right path on hole 15 and go way right into the thick brush from there, or if you get a rollaway long down the hill past the basket on 17. All of these places have the benefit of, if you're watching your disc, you'll have a pretty good idea of where it's going to end up, and though it may require some searching, it shouldn't be too long. The more subtle one that didn't affect my play is hole 14. Here the disc could potentially take a tree kick in a number of different directions after it drops below the crest of the hill where you can't see it anymore, and end up either far left or far right of where you would expect, potentially in thick brush. If you're playing with someone else, having a spotter watch at the crest of the hill just off the tee of 14 is probably a good idea. Then we have hole 16. A group ahead of me had someone lose a disc on 16 after hitting a tree on the left side of the fairway and kicking right down the hill. The four of them and I spent about 15 minutes combing the hillside for it before they gave up. The hillside is steep, but the brush is dense in places, so there's a lot to hit and stop the momentum on the way down. Having the disc make it all the way to the parking lot is actually the best case scenario because it will be much easier to find. Every time I have played this hole, I've been left in short because I don't want that bad tree kick. This is a case where the drop-off on the right being 50 feet instead of 5 feet turns this hole from decent to diabolical. The tee pads have some variance in quality. Most of the tee pads are decorative concrete, and these are all good. They provide good grip in both the wet and the dry. A couple of them, holes 14 and 18 come to mind, are rubber mats on top of wood. Though different, these are also fine, though the tee pad at 18 is particularly narrow, only about 3 feet wide. This is justified due to the 6-foot wide tree gap that's about 10 feet off the tee that you have to go through. It is shorter than normal also, and even though this hole is 190 feet, it is so far uphill that most noodle arms like myself need a full run-up to have a prayer of making it inside circle 2 from the tee. Finally, there's hole 17, which has no formal tee pad, but because this is the downhill to 18's uphill, this 201-foot hole plays much shorter, and I was concerned about overthrowing my drive with a putter on a backhand, none of which are my long-distance options. I would consider this as an acceptable compromise in this particular case to prioritize the bike path rather than putting in a formal permanent tee pad. The T signs, though temporary, are better than the permanent signs they were placed over. The only things missing on them that I would suggest for the next run would be to include elevation change and a direction to the next tee, and have printed rather than handwritten distances on them when the time comes to make permanent signs. I think the graphic style is both aesthetically pleasing and effective, and works well with the course. The baskets are the older style Mach 5 baskets. They seem to catch well enough, and they're all in good condition. Though they are slightly easier to see in person than they are in the video, especially on sunny days where the light shines through the trees, it can be difficult to see them in high contrasting light situations. Most of the baskets have bright orange tape on the center poles, which greatly aids in their visibility. The video doesn't lie on these, though. In many cases, the baskets are difficult to see in the woods, especially if you don't know exactly where to look. Determining an overall course rating on this course is a bit tricky. For the first 13 holes, there's a good mix of shot shapes with just the right amount of open throws to let your disc fly max distance, but not feel like you're just throwing in an open field, and with gaps in the woods that feel tight but not unreasonably so, and with a good mix of all sorts of elevation changes. Then we get to 14 through 18. I think 14 would be fine with a few trees being removed to at least create a gap or two that a pro could get to circle 2 with reliably. As I mentioned earlier, 15 made longer with the Mando and made a par 4 would feel a lot better to amateurs. 17 is fine as it is, with no other shots like that anywhere on the course. 16 and 18, I wish I had more insight as to what to do with them. All that said, the first 13 holes are very good, and I would be willing to drive 1 hour and 45 minutes to play this course for the first time, and 1 hour to play this course again. I'm really hoping that the course continues with its progression and that changes are made to the last 5 holes in particular to bring them up to the fun factor of the rest of the course. I will play this course again, though it will probably not be until the summer. Even with this course being good now, it does have the potential to become exceptional. The time that I would drive is also boosted in that I think that even with its flaws, it is a better overall experience than the only other regularly open to the public 18-hole disc golf course that is within a half-hour drive of here, Birch Park in Amherst, link in the description. And this course has much more physical land where the course could be improved, where Birch Park does not. The Hollows, north particularly, is a better course but is just over a half-hour away. The course design philosophy is a little confusing based on the fact that this course is on the grounds of a middle and high school, and I feel the target market for this course would be high school students and up. With no short tee options, having several par 3 holes that are over 300 feet makes them unreachable for middle school students. The difficulty variance from holes 1 to 13 and 14 to 18 is significant, and my concern is that the last 5 holes may discourage some of the students that go here from playing disc golf, and that would be a shame with the first 13 holes being a good beginner to amateur disc golf experience. Like, share, and subscribe to keep up with my disc golf videos, or if you need calculus help. Check out my other video linked here, or the playlist of my disc golf courses of New Hampshire linked in the description.